Salutations, ladies and gentlemen. The Knife Raven here, back again with another video. And oh boy, where have I been? Well, short answer, I've been sick for quite some time. And aside from that, I just have been rather busy and haven't been able to get a video out here, so I don't know if you'll be seeing one or two videos or if this will be it. But in the meantime, I'm back, I'm okay, I'm around, and Merry Christmas, and it's New Year's Eve today, so Happy New Year probably by the time most people see this. In the meantime, what will we be discussing today? Well, the answer to that is another, and the last, of my batch of Thiers Issard knives, and this is probably the nicest of the bunch. This is the Tonneau. I am unsure of exact pronunciation, but I am pretty sure that that is correct. Now, tonneau in French means barrel, I believe, and this knife does have a vague barrel-like shape. But this particular knife is probably the most expensive of my Thiers Issards, and even then, it's still, I think, 70 Canadian, which is quite inexpensive for a knife of this style. So, yeah, let's get into it. To start, of course, get the steel out of the way. All Thiers Issards that I have 12C27 Sandvik, which is the same steel you'll find on almost any French knife ever, that isn't carbon, that is. Lagiols and Opinel and Thiers knives, they almost always use 12C27. Again, if you're going to freak out about the steel, well, yeah, it's not super steel, but I don't think they make this with the intent that you will be abusing the knife and using it to the point where you'll need to be sharpening it every single day, multiple times a day. So if that disappoints you and that's not the steel you're looking for, well, I'm afraid this is what they offer. But in the meantime, this is a very unique blade, a very unique shape of a knife. To start off, the fit and finish on this is pretty good. There are no gaps up here. The spring does sit a little low, so it looks like there's a gap here, but that is not a gap. You can see pretty clean overall. There's a tiny gap here, but, you know, nothing too serious. Blade centering is absolutely perfect, which for Thiers Issards is kind of a hit and miss thing. I know my Thiers from Thiers Issard is almost perfect. It's just a little off to the left. Well, to the right technically, but when you look at it, it's to the left. This one is very much off to the left. And this one is also almost perfectly centered. So Thiers Issards have had a slightly hit and miss centering record, but I think that this is very, very nice. It's very well done. Transitions from the bolsters to the handle scales are seamless, and the pins are absolutely buttery smooth. Very well done, very well executed pin construction. The guillochage, or the file work, is very well done. Remember, this is done by hand, so this is a pretty tedious process. You can see some small differences in the pattern. Sometimes you're going to get that with a handmade knife, but you can see there's a very nice pattern flowing throughout the blade. It extends all the way onto the spring, onto the corkscrew, and this is incredibly rare, even underneath the corkscrew. So they went above and beyond with the extra embellishments on this knife. And again, $70 for this is, that's unbeatable. The blade, while it's open, is a sheepfoot, sort of, although I am tempted to call this a ram's foot, which there's an ongoing debate for blade shapes. And little story here, Great Eastern Cutlery, very well known in the knife community, released a pattern, a 93 pattern, called the ram's foot. And it was kind of a swayback handle with a single ram's foot blade. Now, they threw out that name kind of as just something different. I mean, if they called it the sheep foot, that would have been a pretty basic name. So they called it the ram's foot. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was the first time that name had been used. And what a ram foot was, it was a sheep foot blade, but instead of being straight all around, it got a little bit thicker at the front. So the opposite of a lamb foot, which is thicker at the back and thinner at the front. So there's been an ongoing debate whether sheep foots with slightly thicker front sections of the blade should be called ram's foots, or if that was just a one-off thing that GEC did and it doesn't bear any real meaning. So that's really up to you. I'm more inclined to call this a ram's foot just because most sheep foots are not like this. They're very symmetrical. So I'm going to call this a ram foot. If you want to disagree with me and call it a sheep foot, that's entirely up to you. But that's what I'll be calling it from here on out. The blade itself has a pretty nice sharp edge, although it's quite easy to damage because with a lot of Thiers knives, if you slam the blade down, it will cause some blade wrap to form. In fact, I've tried to be as gentle with this knife as I can, and you can even see at the very, very front there, there's still a tiny little chip. See if this will focus. It's minuscule, but right there. Yeah, the camera's not picking it up too well, but this is a very sharp blade, and 12C27, easy enough to sharpen up. Has the crown with the G and R on the blade, and the Knives of Our Grandfathers logo stamped in to the steel itself. The corkscrew is pretty simple. It's not a very large corkscrew. In fact, it's probably on the smaller end, but you could certainly use this as a corkscrew. It's not just for show. This would make a great picnic knife. Actually, most Thiers Issard knives would make excellent picnic knives. I mean, that's not good. The very thin, slender blades, very simple designs. They're not threatening. They're not overly flamboyant, or they're not terribly rugged either. So they would make for a nice, classy picnic knife. But you can see this Tonneau is perhaps the best for that specific line of use. The blade sticks out quite a bit. There's a nail nick, which works fairly well, but I prefer to just pinch it. Spring tension, like all Thiers Issard knives, not terribly strong. I'd rate this one about maybe a 5 or a 4. Not very strong. Handles are made of cocobolo wood, which is a material that I've never had before. I've heard a lot of great things about it. It's very well known in the knife community, used quite often by brands like GEC, but this is my first time getting some of it, and it's very, very nice. It's very smooth with a quite nice grain pattern. So size comparisons. Here it is next to the Canavo in Snakewood. These are all Thiers Issards, of course. Here it is next to the Ronet in Juniper. And here it is with the Thiers knife in Birch. So you can see it's certainly not the largest knife here, but it still dwarfs the Thiers in size. But this is an anomaly. This is a very small Thiers knife. Yeah. So I've gone over the fit and finish, and I've been pretty positive about it. But there is one thing that does irk me a bit, and that I will showcase now. That blade is, again, off-center. Now, in its closed position, it's perfect. But when open, you can very clearly see that is a warped blade. And I've been noticing this more and more in knives that I've even had for a fair bit of time. And I really need to ask. I know I've received comments that say that it's fairly common and everything, but I consider myself to be a bit of a knife snob. I find gaps, I point them out, I get annoyed by them. I don't like blade play. I don't like blade wrap. There are a lot of things that I dislike that the majority of people in the knife community also dislike. But the one thing I almost never see people talking about is a warped blade. I mean, of course, if the blade is very, very warped, then people will talk about it, but everyone seems to care about the centering. And, in fact, this Tonneau here, most people would be losing their minds over this. But yet, I almost never see people complaining about warped handles or warped blades. And I wonder, is this something that I am blowing out of proportion? Is this not a problem? Is this not a flaw? Or am I just the only one who really talks about it? Because I've been pretty invested in traditional knives, and in particular that is, and the knife community as a whole, and I very rarely see people talking about warped blades. But I notice them very frequently, so either I'm very unlucky and get a whole lot of knives with offset blades, or no one else bothers to talk about them. So, again, I've said this before, but if I'm one of the few people who actually talks about this, let me know. Either that, or let me know that I'm just picky and that no one else cares, which could very well be possible too. But it just kind of irritates me when I have an otherwise perfect knife, no real gapping issues, great centering, no blade play at all, the fit and finish, the guillochage, everything, the pin's smooth, the stamping is excellent, the grind is great. Even the spring tension on the corkscrew is pretty reasonable. It's about a 5. But when I just see off blades, it irks me, because I don't understand why this keeps happening. And, well, it just seems to be an issue that few people discuss. Unless, of course, I'm missing every time when it's discussed, which could be possible, but I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments about this knife in particular, but also about this issue that I seem to get quite frequently with a lot of different knives from a lot of different brands. Otter, A. Wright, Thiers, Issard. Just seems to be a thing that keeps happening. But nonetheless, that one kind of major complaint aside, this knife is very well made. It has good fit and finish. It's well made in every other sense, and I really like how it looks. And I'm sure that despite being something that personally irritates me, this blade would not perform any worse, and chances are it would still work as a great picnic knife. But I guess one must keep in mind that as Thiers Issards are considered budget knives, and this one is kind of the higher end of that because of all the guillochage, I should probably just accept this and stop getting upset about the blades with their warps. But I still really like Thiers Issard knives. I think that they have a timeless sense of class to them. They're very traditional. They're kind of like the French trapper pattern or the French Barlow. They seem to have a timeless aesthetic to them that I really, really appreciate. But yeah, I have a small little collection here, and I've been mostly pleased with them, aside from, my need to always find flaws with otherwise alright knives. For example, like, again, the Tonneau blade offset. But again, let me know in the comments if I'm just picky and this is not a problem at all, which I very much would not be surprised about. Who knows? I'm not sure. But in the meantime, yeah, I like this knife quite a bit. It's still my favorite of this recent batch of Thiers Issards, and while I do still think I like the Thiers overall, just because of how much of an anomaly it is, I do really like this one. It definitely gives off an air of luxury that the others don't have to the same degree. And of course, it does come with its own custom little leather pouch, which you can use to store the knife and prevent it from getting dented, scratched, or otherwise harmed. So yeah, great little pocket slip. In the meantime, sorry this video has been a bit rambly. It kind of went off the rails when I started complaining about off-center blades again, but aside from that, I do quite like this knife, and I think that it does have potential. I just hope that I was the only one who got a copy with a blade like that. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. This has been the Knife Raven. As always, signing off. Goodbye.